Hey everybody, this is Houston Gaines. I'm here with professional sports writer and sports commentator Jeff Dantzler. So Jeff, how did you get started in your sports writing and sports broadcasting career?
Well, I was kind of like you, Houston. I was a young guy. I was a tennis player, but I kind of realized that I wasn't going to be the next Herschel Walker, Dominique Wilkins, or Michael Pernford. So I really love sports, so I decided I'd try and follow in the footsteps of Larry Munson and Dan McGill, and just loved working in the business ever since.
When did you know that sports writing and sports commentating is what you wanted to do?
At a pretty young age, I think I was in the sixth grade, I remember, and we had to write a little paper about what do you want to be when you grow up, and I put I wanted to be the sports information director at the University of Georgia. Well, of course, the great Claude Felton's still going strong, so yeah, I think really from that age on, and again, at least I always had honest evaluation of my own talent, so again, I realized at that age, it's like, I just don't think I'm going to be able to be the next great tennis player, the next great basketball player, but I always wanted to work in sports. Yeah, I would have been interested in coaching too, but you almost always have to play to get into coaching. So it's a great way to be around the game.
Now you've worked for the local radio station 960 The Ref, and you've written for the Bulldog Illustrated, a local publication covering UGA athletics. You've also called UGA baseball games and UGA women's basketball games. Of your different occupations, which has been your favorite and why?
Oh, I think doing the play-by-play is my favorite. I really enjoy doing the game on ESPN, now ESPN3, as you said. So I'd like to, in the near future, maybe get a combination of doing a lot of that and continuing doing the play-by-play. But it's doing play-by-play for baseball and for basketball, especially for the school you love and for coaches that you're so close to. And I was very lucky back in the 90s when I first started. The Lady Dogs went to 3 Final Fours, and then in the 2000s we've gone to 4 College World Series, and 3 of them under David Perno's watch. So it's been a blast. And there's I think doing play-by-play is a difficult thing to do. I think there are not a lot of people who are really, really good at it. And kind of my favorite is when Georgia wins a close game and we're on the road and there's no television, so people are kind of forced to listen to you. And that's about my favorite, when all those planets align.
What's the most difficult part of your job?
I would say just trying to climb the ladder in the business. It's very difficult to do, and it can be frustrating. And now as you get higher and higher on the national levels and all, what you've had happen, obviously, in the influx of former athletes, they get a lot of jobs. You've got kids of legendary broadcasters like Joe Buck and Tom Brenneman that immediately get bumped up. And now the latest wave, of course, the sideline beauty reporters there. So just for some good old-fashioned sportscasters there, it's hard to find the high-profile jobs these days.
What's been the hardest hill for you to climb in your career?
I would say it kind of goes back to that, just advancing and moving on. And basically, and I love my jobs, but I've been doing the Lady Dogs for 17 years and the baseball for, I guess, 16 now. But it's just trying to continue to climb up and everything. It's tough because it's a great job and a lot of people want to do it. And it always cracks me up. I'll meet people and they'll say, well, gosh, that's not even work. I'd do that for free. And I said, well, don't tell the people who are paying me because I'll get priced out. And I don't make much as it is anyways. But I'd say that the advancement, but all in all, it beats the heck out of digging ditches.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk about different things you've actually covered on air and with your writing. Who's been the most interesting person you've interviewed?
Oh, Dan McGill is the best. Yeah, he's my hero, always has been, the greatest Georgia Bulldog ever, and he's just such a brilliant man. And that is one thing at Georgia. There's no character greater than him, but we've been so fortunate to have such a high number of coaches and really legendary figures just around Athens. When you think about Vince Dooley, obviously, and then on into Jack Bowerly and Andy Landers, Suzanne Yokelin, people who have been around, Manuel Diaz, people who have been around Georgia for so long. And I'm very lucky, too, that the 2 sports I'm primarily involved in David Perno's been such a close friend, and Andy Landers has been a great friend, more of a big brother type. But just to have such a great relationship with them, we have terrific rapport on the air. But yeah, Coach McGill, his interviews are so great, and he has such a great sense of history. And Coach Dooley really does too. And I love talking about, and it was funny when he was athletic director, and we would talk or do interviews, and he would get on talking about history. That's when he really would shine. And I'm just talking about things like, Coach had the 80, 81, and 82 teams. I kind of thought the 81 team was the best. Yeah. And he was really good at kind of backtracking and going to things like that. And I think he always enjoyed talking about that more than some of the current events, which tended to be a little bit more political.
Of the many different events you've covered for writing and broadcasting, which has been your favorite?
Well, I would have to say making it to the College World Series would be at the top. It's the pinnacle, and the runs we had in 2004 and 2008 were at the top. Now, going into that, and you sat in the booth with me in 2008 when we won the Super Regional over NC State, but kind of getting there is so gut-wrenching. Like, we had to beat Tech twice in the regional to advance, and in 2004, the first time Coach Perno took us there, we had to have this great comeback against Clemson to win. So that's really gut-wrenching when you see the great prize that's at the end, but you're playing one of your arch rivals, and boy, we're either getting it or they're getting it.
What's been your greatest or favorite moment on air?
The one that people tell me the most about, in 2001, Jeff Keppinger hit a home run. We were losing to Coastal Carolina 7-6, and had a runner on, 2 outs. Top of the ninth, we were the designated visitor for that one. And he hit his 3rd home run of the day. He went 5 for 5 with 3 home runs. And that play was kind of Georgia baseball's Balloon of Sky. And I'd say that's the call that probably most people remember that I've done.
Who is your favorite athlete of all time and why?
Well, Herschel Walker, greatest college football player ever. And he is, I always said, I'm a huge Yankees fan, so I adore Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, and Mantle. And Herschel's kind of that all rolled into one for Georgia. He's the best there's ever been. And plus, it was lucky for me. He was a freshman. When I was 8 years old, I was really getting into sports then and loved Georgia already. So Herschel hitting and Georgia winning the national title, it was right in my wheelhouse. And so I've obviously been hooked ever since. Of course, we haven't accomplished what we've done since then. If you'd have told me when I was 8 years old that'd be the last national championship we'd win for at least 30 years, that would have been pretty surprising. But the Herschel era, the golden era of Georgia football, those are some special memories that I'll never ever forget.
Who was your greatest role model growing up and why?
Well, I always loved Munson and McGill. They were you can't beat those two. And as I got older and got to know Claude Felton, who's the greatest sports information director there is. So just kind of having those three to look up to and to provide guidance. And can't beat that. Larry Munson, Dan McGill, and Claude Felton.
What are some of your goals as an announcer and a sports writer?
Well, I'd like to write a couple more books. It's difficult to do, and I found that out. I kind of semi-penned one book, but it's not a flowing prose. War and Peace, it ain't. But I'd like to do that. But I'd also like to get a regular television gig calling college football games. And I'd obviously love to always continue doing something with Georgia. And then I'd like to get a higher profile somewhere, whether it be national or regional daily sports talk show, focusing primarily on college football, of course, college athletics, which is my favorite thing.
Last question on Jeff. When and how did your passion for the Bulldogs begin?
Well, it began, honestly, in 1978, Georgia Tech. We were down 20-0 and came back to win. I was 6 years old. I'm 29-28, what still might be the greatest game in Sanford Stadium history. So that really got me hooked in, and my parents always encouraged it, and we had friends who were huge Georgia fans that had bought me Georgia t-shirts and the like when I was a little kid. Then 1980 came around, and I'd really gotten into sports at that point. So 1980, Herschel Walker, I was 8 years old, and from that point on, I never missed another Georgia game unless I was travel and do a Lady Dogs game or something, but I've never, been away from a TV, radio, or the stadium that the game was going on in for 30 years.
All right, Jeff, thanks so much for your time.
You're the greatest, Houston.